Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to Armor of God. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully you'll be edified with what we've put together for you here. And this is the second part of my interview with Father Joseph Iannuzzi. One thing that I like about my interview with Father Iannuzzi is that, as you will see in a moment here, even when I asked him a question like, will our pets go to heaven? The answer he provided to that very simple question is very enlightening. And the reason I included this question in the interview because many people were unhappy with Father Daniel Rehill's answer before. While I do love listening to Father Rehill a lot, he's not a theologian, and therefore it will be interesting to hear how Father Iannuzzi would answer the question. And so I'll kick this off with that question. Will our pets go to heaven?
Yeah, we have to consider two things. Number one, the distinction between patristic Greek theology, which occupied the first 1,000 years of the church, and the Latin Western scholastic theology, which occupied the second 1,000 years of the church. So the Greek Eastern patristic theology is a little bit different than our American or Westernized, or you may say Western European scholastic Latin theology. So the West is heavily imbued with scholasticism. Now, why do I mention this? Because some of the scholastics, including Thomas Aquinas, maintain that there are three forms of life, or three souls, and only one goes on to eternal life. That is the rational. The vegetal and the animal don't. This is the teaching of Aquinas. He doesn't specifically say animals don't go, but that people imply that's what he intends, but that's debatable to this day. The patristics don't really teach that. Now, there are saints, and before I even go to the saints, let's go to the Bible. There is proof that there are animals in heaven in the Bible. In the first and the last book of the Bible, there are animals in heaven. Now, the question is, what is heaven? Is it the paradisiacal state of Eden, where it was replete with animals, which still exists today, as Genesis testifies, when affirming that there is a cherub with a flaming sword guarding its entrance, meaning it's still there. And Anne Catherine Emmerich, in her revelations that have the church's official seals of approval, even though there was a lot of controversy because of Breton, Clemens Breton, whom most likely tweaked some, I'd say 10%, he modified a bit by adding things and embellishing things. Not that he took away anything, he just added things that she didn't say, because she didn't write a word, Catherine Emmerich. It was all spoken, and several people wrote what she said down, and it was often after communion. But and Catherine Emmerich speaks about Eden being replete with these animals, and she goes in detail and describes even unicorns. She talks about that, them being in Eden as well. Yeah. Now she describes what the serpent looked like that tempted Adam and Eve, and going on and on. But in the book of Revelation, we find that Jesus comes down on a white horse as Lord of Lords, King of Kings. Now, where did the horse come from? Okay, so right there, it's implied that there's a horse that's coming down. It's not going up, it's coming down, which suggests from heaven, right? And Christ is riding on it. Now, the question is, if in fact there are animals both in the terrestrial paradise and in the heavenly paradise, are they there from the beginning? Or, here's the question, do they go from this life to there? That's the burning question. The church has no definitive teaching on that. Is it possible that animals do pass from this life to a sort of paradisiacal state, implying therefore that they're immortal souls? And remember, now before I answer that question, we have to consider, if their souls are immortal, then would we have to offer prayers for them, the Mass for them, right? I'm going to tell you a little joke here, and I'm doing it with tongue in cheek. There was once this man from the Protestant denomination, and he approached a Catholic priest and said, Father, my wife died. I've been living alone the last 15 years, and all I have is this pooch, this little dog, and it's been the life to me. It's passed away. Can you offer up a funeral mass for it? And the Catholic priest said, I'm sorry, in our church, we don't offer masses for the souls of irrational creatures, so no. But I'll tell you what, there is a church down the road. It's not Catholic. You could ask them. And he said to the Catholic priest, I would not I'm so disappointed that I would have to give $1,500 for the funeral service and the casket to this church and not you. And the Catholic priest said, why didn't you tell me the dog was Catholic? It's a bad joke. I'm probably going to spend a month in purgatory for that one. Nonetheless, we can laugh about ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that, without mocking ourselves, of course. The truth is that the church is not officially taught in this regard. But if, in fact, they do pass from this life to the next life, if they do that, that doesn't necessarily imply that we have to do prayers for them. It doesn't. Okay, because they're not motivated by volition and rationality, which humans are, angels are. Animals are not. They call it instinct, impulse, things like that. And these irrational beings, whether it's animals or plants or luminaries throughout the cosmos, they all have souls, but they're not rational souls. The word soul means animation, or anima in Latin. So that means anything that has mobility, has stimuli that responds and interacts, is motivated by some sort of soul, right? Now, are all those souls immortal? The church has no official teaching on that, but there is reason to believe that certainly there are animals in the next life based on those two passages I shared with you from Genesis and the book of Revelation, but also in Catherine Emmerich's recounts as well of these animals. I'll give you another example. It just came to mind. Don Bosco. St. Don Bosco used to fight these evil organizations, societies, dark societies that would war against the church. This is back in the late 1800s. Whenever he was threatened, in fact, someone came up to him with a knife, a dog would appear out of nowhere, a shepherd, and would defend him and disappear. Where did the dog come from? Where did it go? He called it his guardian angel, you know? So was it a physical dog? Was it just an apparition of a dog? We don't know. But we do know that in this case, an animal was sent apparently by God to defend Don Bosco several times.
Some of you might not be too happy with the answer. Some might even understand a little better why Father Rehill and Monsignor Rossetti said that our pets won't be going to heaven by now. In any case, I hope the explanation provided by Father Iannuzzi there is helpful, bringing you greater understanding about the subject. Now I'm sorry if the video somehow seems to be little, and it will be something that I'll try to work on as I do more interviews. Hopefully the subtitle I've provided for you will be helpful for you. Anyway, in one of our previous videos recently, I've shared something from the former exorcist, Father Fortea, who said that exorcists shouldn't hate demons. He said that during one exorcism, the demon said to Father Fortea that he can't be cast out with hate. And this is why Father Fortea said exorcists shouldn't hate demons. I asked Father Iannuzzi what he thought about this. And Father Iannuzzi knew Father Fortea personally, and here's his comment on what Father Fortea said.
Yes, if in the scriptures, where Saint Michael approaches the devil, okay, and he says, "May God correct you." That's how he rebuked Satan. May God correct you, and that is the approach we ought to take as well. Yeah, and it's true. Hate is a product of Lucifer. Hate is a product of now. There is a holy hatred. There's difference. It's like the word fear. Perfect love casts out all fear, says St. John. Right? But the psalmist says the beginning of wisdom is fear. So who was right? They're both right. There's a holy fear and there's a servile fear. Same thing with hatred. There's a holy hatred, which is not spite, which is not anger, in the sense that I'm going to be vindicated. I'm going to get even with you. No, that has no place in Christ's conduct, nor in ours. And then there's um, uh, not a holy hatred, just a human hatred, where we let the ego and the sensitivities get in the way. When it comes to combating evil, there is no hatred. And in fact, Father Gabriel Amorth was good at that. He was firm, he was serious, he was severe, but he had no hate. And he would cast them out using Jesus' authority, not his own. So once a person starts to hate, they're putting their way in front of themselves. They're putting themselves in front of Jesus. You always have to have Jesus in front of you.
For the next clip, it's another question submitted by one of you. How can we as Catholic balance Jesus' teaching of love, forgiveness, and turning the other cheek while not being a doormat?
Yes, yes. How do we love those who do not like us without allowing them to abuse our love or charity or being a doormat? Through discernment. Through discernment. And discernment is acquired by praying on one's knees and abandoning one's agenda to God and asking God and the Blessed Mother for this gift of discernment. The little flower Saint Thérèse de Lisieux in her letters, which are not many people have. This is not in her biography. This expression is in her letters to her sisters, that some people are so stubborn we must take them by the scruff of their collar. That's tough love. Others are so gentle we must take them by the tip of their wings, which is tender love. How do we know when to apply the two? Through discernment. Same thing here. How do we know when a person's abusing our goodness and not really sorry, so as not to be duped by them? Faustina asked this to the Lord as well when she was to promote his mercy. And she said, but look, Lord, they're abusing my mercy. God said, what is that to you? But now what he meant by that was don't use this. He didn't mean don't use discernment. He meant as long as you are doing what I ask of you, that is enough. And what God asks of us is to turn the other cheek whenever someone asks forgiveness from the heart. Now, we can always read a person's heart, only God can. So we err on the side of charity, but when it comes to risk reward, like they're going to ask us for something, money, and they're going to use it on drugs, and they say, oh, this time I won't. How do you know that? There are ways to go around that. You don't give them money, you give them food, you give them something else. So there are ways in which you can forgive without putting yourself at risk. And this is determined by discernment, case by case, individual by individual. We always are to forgive when a person is truly sorry. And we try to discern that as best we can.
And for the last clip of Father Iannuzzi in this video is this. I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity of asking him this question. Why are some saints? It took so long for the Church to canonize them as saints. For example, Saint Faustina, who was canonized as a saint in 2000.
Yeah, the process of canonization is as follows. The first level is called the Servant of God level. That's the first title given once the Vatican grants its nihil obstat to the cause going forward. The second step is venerable. They review the writings of the person, the candidate who is up for canonization. And if there's nothing obstructing faith and morals, contradicting faith and morals, then the church acknowledges authentic their writings and gives that individual, the candidate, the title venerable. So first they receive servant of God when the cause of beatification opens. Then they review the writings and give them the title venerable. And then if a miracle is attributed to them, okay, they become blessed. And then if they have two miracles, they're called saint. Now, if they found a community like St. St. Ignatius of Loyola, St. Dominic, St. Benedict, all they need is one miracle. All right, so now why does it take longer for Luisa than for, let's say, Acunis? Well, because number one, Luisa wrote so much. She wrote 36 volumes, and it takes the church a long time to review all of these materials. Same thing with John Paul II. He traveled all over the world, and they had to basically retrace all his steps to gather up all his talks and writings and things like that. It took a while. So that's really one of the reasons why Luisa's cause is taking so long. Another reason is because of the poor or archaic grammar, because she spoke and wrote in dialect. That's an issue. Bernadette of Lourdes spoke and wrote in dialect, and the Virgin Mary spoke to her in dialect, and Jesus spoke to Louise in dialect. So God lowers himself to our level, and therefore if you pick up her writings in Italian today, Louisa's writings, even though I speak Italian, it's a very archaic and almost outdated. It is, in many respects, an outdated language because, first of all, she had a very limited education, only first 1.5 grades. She almost made it to second grade in what's referred to as the American system. And therefore, her vocabulary was limited. So let's say you have 5 words, 5 synonyms for the word anger. She only had one, right? And therefore, when she was trying to express these sublime eternal realities, she was expressing them with a very impoverished dialectic grammar. And when people read it, they're like, God wouldn't use these words, and he wouldn't. And in fact, she says in her writings in volume 1 that oftentimes God didn't say a word. I would come up with the words, but God would give me a light of knowledge. And this is common even with Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, and many mystics. He gives them an infused light of knowledge that's less than a second, but it takes months for it to unfold and them to fully understand it. But they have to put together the words to express it in their own language. So that's why some of Louisa's grammar is very hard to stomach, very hard to assimilate, because it can come across as rough or extreme or eccentric. For example, she would say, when it comes to things of this earth, it was like mud and rot, the things of this earth. But God never uses those words because everything he created is good. But what she intends to say, which later on in her volume she better expresses, is compared to heaven, it's like chaff. It's like fleeting material things that, when compared to the eternal realities, are nothing.
Well, and that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this interview. I'll release more from the interview in the next video. For the time being, I want to let you know that there is going to be another interview with him as well as Father Lampert, so I'll continue asking them the questions that you've submitted before. Anyway, for those of you who'd like to support our works, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contribution, and prayers. I cannot thank all of you enough, and until the next one, stay safe, stay healthy, and may God bless you.